great to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation and for the honor of being here. And of course, I owe it down to my professor who called me and said, hey, you need to come here and give a keynote, and said, how could I say no to the man who shaped what I know and I speak about today. So thank you for the invitation, Harald. Just so that I know who I'm speaking to, who says here are not from academia, they're more from industry? Just a show of hands. Excellent, so it's a good balance. Look, I'll try to give you a way we look at it as Deutsche Telekom, and I, on purpose, have reimagined, and I hope it comes clear why we really need to reimagine the network when we think towards 6G. And let me start from the 5G. Every newspaper even the traditional newspapers like Bloomberg, Reuters, there's a lot of talk how 5G has been a failure, and that we need to make sure that 6G doesn't fail as much. We, as Deutsche Telekom, we look at it differently. Let's just be clear. I think 5G has been successful for us. With the speed of deployment that we've done in Germany, across the Europe, we've been able to have a population coverage of 98% in such a short time. And just so that you get some feeling as well, if you look at our mobile customer growth, we've been able to double our growth rate every year since we've launched 5G. And the capacity demand has been increasing by 30%, and we've been able to capture that and use 5G. So we are happy. It helps us to remain very strong and leading for our customers in terms of quality. Unfortunately, there's a but. And the reality is that we were overly ambitious, and some of us sitting here will know that we were guilty of our own ambition, how much 5G would change the world, will solve everything. And I think we need to be cautious and be realistic, but still have audacious goals, big societal goal to really address. We overcomplicated the standardization. Now, if I'm looking at it as the practitioner that had to deploy and run the 5G network, with all of you know, standalone and standalone, option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is just a disaster because it just makes it so complex while we thought we provided options. And again, that's something where I say needs to get better. Now, it was high performance, it's true, but still one of my biggest concerns when it comes to the way our networks are designed, architected, and still run is the power, energy demand, and performance, and I'll get to that again. So my ask, and this is just, if I may out myself here, the first time I'm talking about 6G, because honestly, I'm not a big fan of the generational game, and not just for us as telco operators who get to invest a lot of capex every 10 years, but it's just unhealthy for the vendor ecosystem, for the entire ecosystem, to have such a generational innovation spurs that says, okay, now we need to standardize and drive, and then we have another 10 years. And I think where we need to get to is that we solve big problems continuously, not every 10 years. And that leads into the vendor consolidation we see in our industry, which is not healthy. A lot of vendors are struggling today because, in my eyes, this cyclic investment. And for us to solve that, we need to come up with a new business model for the vendors, but also from a service provider perspective, a continuous innovation, significant innovation. That's why I say it's very important that even though we are all here technologists, we love our technology, for once we need to really start by looking at it. I love what Sir John said here, which is solve big societal problem. The more societal problem, customer problems we solve, the more business opportunity there is for all of us. And that is what we need to do in 6G. Now, what does that mean in concrete terms? I think AI is everywhere. And I believe we all know that, yes, there's a lot of hype around it, but there is huge potential. And we really believe there's a huge potential to shape all industries. And telecoms, we are not an exception. And AI need to play at the center of the network evolution as we think. And that means, for me, in our planning, in our architecting, in our algorithm, from the scheduler to the way we operate it. And second, it needs to be intent-based. And I was chatting today morning to Harald, also saying, if I look at our network, and we talk about here 0 bit, 0 watt, today, the way we design and deploy our network is that we over-provision, all of us, for the max capacity, because we don't want to disappoint our customers. Means you're beaming with 100% power, and only when you see opportunity, you start to switch off layer by layer. We've gotten better through the use of AI. But just if we are honest, that's a 5% efficiency we're talking about. And that doesn't bring us to the kind of request that I have here, which is the 0 bit, 0 watt. What I mean is, for all network operators, we're not an exception. When there is still no traffic at 3 a.m. in the morning, there is still 70–80% energy consumption from our network. This can't be the right network design. And that's something we really need to, where we say intent-based, when the customer needs it. And for that need, there needs to be specialized networks. And we need to be smarter in our spectrum approach. Yes, there are opportunities with higher spectrum usage. And it's not just the mobile. It's also the fixed wireless, closing the digital divide, making sure that we can serve all customers with close to 100% coverage, but also in serving the broadband gap. And that's something with higher spectrum sharing, and smart spectrum policies that we should be able to address, and we believe we ought to address that very strongly. And this cannot happen in a vacuum just by us as a service provider saying these are our demands, and vendors go standardize it and push it. This needs to start early, and that's why I'm happy that I see in institutions like Cambridge and others really doing the research work much earlier. And the policymakers need to be involved both in financing, but also in shaping what policies are required when these technologies become a reality and get deployed, because that's too late. And if we look at the world, how we have evolved, this part of the world, Europe, was at the center of cellular technology. 2G, the memorandum of understanding that was defined by the 4 operators, European operators, defined exactly what we get to know today as mobile communication standards and what we've driven. And the big vendors, ecosystems that we had, they started to disappear. Their relevance less and less. And the entire software space, the other side of the Atlantic, which by itself is nothing bad, but I think there's a role to play on this part of the Atlantic. And if we want to do that, we need to start early by investing early, both in hardware, software, and fundamental AI research. And this needs a really much stronger interworking, both with policymakers, research, and cooperation. I was a little bit negatively surprised how little investment from the UK industries or UK even government flows into the academia research, because if you compare that, this is what defines standard. It needs to be a standard, essential research, fundamental research happening much earlier, and that's what's needed. The startup ecosystem, it will become much more relevant because it's not just about the hardware. We talked about the software-defined network over years. Now it becomes a reality. It means software plays a very important role. That's easy entry point, and that's what we need to use as an opportunity as well. And corporates like us, we need to take up more responsibility. Most of us already, the first area we, let's say, cut was standardization, research, and that's the part we are now revisiting and seeing what role can we play, and we have time. So we don't like the race to 6G. It needs to be a continuous innovation. And if we go to 6G, let's work from complexity to a simplicity. That's so significant. The more complexity we create, the more cost on the service provider side, the less customer value. Economically viable and environmentally sustainable. And again, I will not be tired in really addressing this again and again. The way we have our network designed, architected today, it's not sustainable. It's not energy efficient. And it's not, I'm not talking about a 5% energy saving. I'm talking about the 80%. If I'm not using the network to serve the customer, if there's no capacity demand, it needs to consume zero. And that's something we need to do. And it cannot, I cannot emphasize enough, it cannot be done with one set of companies, cooperation, or geographies left and right alone. It needs to be a collaboration and not isolation. And it needs to be a global standard, a single global standard. We've had our share of experience when disjoint standards happen, less adaptation, less value for the society, and a unified approach is what we need. Thank you so much for paying attention. I'm looking forward to receiving your questions.